I mean, I think, and we've talked about this a lot of times before, I mean, I think the bank's assessment, and we use this in the forecasts on the Brexit impact, really hasn't changed actually since the sort of work that was done.
Doesn't it in effect compound the problem?
Well, I think I was going to follow up and say, I mean, this work, I think Ben and I did, because I wasn't at the bank at the time, but this was done pretty soon after the referendum. It essentially assumes that there is a long run downshift in the level of productivity. I think of around, it's a bit over 3%, and that at least 2 of those comes sort of fairly well forward in the time frame. And I think it's fair to say I don't think anything we've seen so far changes our view on that. We haven't changed our view on that so far. So there is an effect in it. That's what I'm saying. Yes, there is an effect. Yep. It's not one that, as I say, we've not been surprised by that. I would also add that, I mean, I think it's for Michael to obviously take his own view.
He's a liberated man now, clearly. Carry on.
You said it. I've always, my approach has always been that, as a public official, I'm neutral on Brexit, per se, but I'm not neutral in saying these are what we think are the most likely economic effects of it. But you're a great expert on this subject.
I can comment on that, and clearly I've written a lot about it, so I'm not going to talk about the political choice that was made. I'm going to talk about the economic impact.
But the implications is what I'm interested in.
So it's undeniable now that we're seeing much bigger slowdown in trade in the UK compared to the rest of the world. That's showing up despite the statistics having been much worse than they used to be. There being a discontinuity, but people have tried to do various ways of trying to correct for those things. There's also the services export side, which we don't have very much contaminated statistics for, so I can say that much more confidently, that there again we're seeing a really strong stagnation. So we're definitely performing below trend in terms of the exports numbers, in terms of the imports, even probably a bit bigger than that. Yep. My own work shows that the simple way of thinking about what Brexit's done to the economy is that in the period that happened after the referendum, there was the very, very sort of powerful, the biggest depreciation that any of the world's 4 major economies have seen overnight, that contributed to increasing prices, reduced wages, and I'm not talking simply through real wages, but also through nominal wages. We think that number is about 2.6% below the trend that real wages would have been on. After that came, sort of soon afterwards and before the TCA happened, came the effects from the uncertainty that was unleashed, which basically translates into reduced business investment. I'm less certain of the FDI effects. Those tend to be very lumpy things. Then what's happening now, we're starting to now see the trade numbers react to the Brexit, the actual TCA impact. And that's what I mentioned in the beginning, that we're definitely underperforming compared to our peers, both in terms of what we're sending to the EU, as well as in terms of what we're sending to the rest of the world.